Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Celeste. I went from Hidden Gem Undertale to Hidden Gem Celeste back to back. This came out around the same time as Undertale, and they are both rather beloved indie games that inspired many games going forward. I think of this one closely to the Nintendo Switch. It was a very big indie darling when the Nintendo Switch was first released, and it had a fairly accessible price point at the time too. So it was very much a game that lots of people figured they might as well download and try out because it wasn't that big of a time investment to play through the main story, and it wasn't that big of a financial investment either. On top of just being talk of the town online, I think it won like best indie game or something one of these years. So it was a fairly big deal. And I just like Undertale, I do feel like we're more at the tail end of the bell curve in terms of like people talking about this game. It's kind of gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, of course I've played Celeste. Who hasn't at this point? This is my third full playthrough of the game. Actually, I wouldn't call it a full playthrough. My first time playing through this game, I actually did 100% complete it. Like, I got everything, and we'll get into exactly what that means in a little bit, but I just played through the main story and ran the credits because I wanted some feel-good moments about my own mental health. In this game, a character called Madeline is trying to climb this giant snowy mountain called the Celeste Mountain. This is a very daunting task, and her story is slowly revealed why she is trying to climb this mountain, why she's so determined and set on accomplishing such a feat. She encounters several interesting characters along the way. Some of them are helpful, others are not so much. On top of trying to accomplish this daunting task of climbing this snowy mountain, she has a figurative and literal part of her that is essentially like trying to sabotage her and get her to give up. And so that's where the mental health messaging comes in. I do think, without spoiling too much about this game, I do think that it has a very heartfelt message about loving yourself and accepting who you are while also trying to make yourself better in the process. And I think that this game has several meanings related to that self-love and mental health as well. There's a whole message about like, yes, this is very challenging and this is difficult, but you can do it if you keep trying. And I think that the message of the story correlates with the actual gameplay, because the gameplay is very challenging. This is a two-dimensional platformer, but it is not going to be a walk in the park because there are hazards all over the place. Touch a spike, immediately die. Fall down the pit, immediately die. Collide with an enemy, believe it or not, immediately die. But it is also a very forgiving game, so it's super challenging but really forgiving, because if you die, you just immediately respawn at the beginning of the room. But don't get me wrong, like, you're not going to feel super good about dying, especially in some of these rooms that are fairly large, because having to start over a fairly large room with this gauntlet of difficult challenges and then you die at the very end, it's frustrating and it still sucks, but you feel that drive to keep going because at least instead of warping back to the beginning of the level, you only warp back to the beginning of the room. And that's like the message of this game. Like, this is tough, but if you just keep trying, eventually you can climb this mountain. And I think that you can relate the messages of this game to your own life as well. The base game, the base story is relatively short. You could probably finish it in one sitting if you're not going for any of the extra collectibles or challenges. And if that's all you want to do, I recommend doing that for the story alone. Even if you're not like super into platformers, I think that it's forgiving enough that you could play through it for the story and get the message behind it. The visuals are surprisingly good given its basic pixelized style. The music is absolutely wonderful. You should definitely listen to the soundtrack even if you aren't planning on playing through the game. In terms of extra collectibles, you can find these cassette tapes that are hidden in each level, and these cassette tapes unlock like remixed, super difficult versions of the level's unique mechanics, but then there are also like remixes of the soundtrack as well. So those are also worth giving a listen to. And I do like the level diversity in this game because each level has like 1 or 2 unique mechanics that it introduces fairly early in the game, but then it does that thing where it ramps up the difficulty with the level's mechanics, and then it's like a simple premise, but then it really like fleshes itself out in terms of like how complex and like exactly like what kind of things can you do with these mechanics. And I feel like once you unlock the B side and even the C side of these levels, then it like cranks up the difficulty up to 10 and 11 respectively. So it's like, oh, okay, so you think you've mastered the mechanics of this level, but let's really crank up the difficulty and really flesh out what you can do with these mechanics. Visually, stylistically, like all these levels are fairly diverse as well. You'd think just climbing a snowy mountain, you're going to be encountering a lot of rough terrain with snow blowing all over the place, which is the case here, but you know, you're also going to be navigating through an abandoned city or a hotel, or like the other side of the mountain is like this colorful, spiky looking area. And so there's enough diversity here to keep the game fresh throughout the whole playthrough. And it's short enough that you don't feel burnt out either. I love when Madeline interacts with the other characters because it's not like voice acted, it's more like Animal Crossing where you read the text box, but then there's this weird like garbled noise sound that comes from them when they're talking, and I love the sound effect here. Like you can totally tell the sound of when they're cheerful and happy or when they're very upset and disappointed or disgruntled as well. In terms of other collectibles that you'll be finding alongside these cassette tapes that unlock the B and C tracks, you can find these strawberries that are hidden all over the place. Sometimes they're not hidden, sometimes it's more like a challenge in order to get these strawberries, but it's just like if you're looking for more of a challenge beside the base game, there are these strawberries that are scattered throughout the levels. Some levels have like 20, others have more like 30, but you're going to go through and try and collect them all if you're a completionist, and it will tell you after you beat a level how many strawberries you collected and how many more are in that level. So if you want to go back and try to get that completion rate, it will also tell you how many times you died at that level. And it wasn't unusual for me to die more than 100 times at a level, but it didn't feel like it because, like I mentioned earlier, it's like super forgiving, so you teleport right back to the beginning of that room. But it also like has that messaging like, hey, you should be proud of how many times that you died because that means you grew that much. You learned from you got that experience from all of those hundreds of deaths. I didn't get all the strawberries this playthrough. I think by the end I had 106 or 7, and I think there's around 150 if I'm not mistaken. It was kind of one of those things where if there was a strawberry that I encountered organically while playing through the level, I'd go for it, but I'm not going to necessarily search every nook and cranny for all the strawberries and unlockables. There are a decent amount of hidden walls, but there's like subtle clues that they're a hidden wall, so you kind of do want to check out all the little like cracked areas on the walls or all the places that the walls kind of like indent in a little bit. Those are kind of these subtle clues that you can like go through to find these hidden passageways. What do the strawberries do? Well, gameplay wise, nothing, which I have mixed feelings about. I do think it would be kind of cool, you know, throw us some like unlockable skins or something, but they do change like the very end of the game, of the story, not in like a substantial way. You're basically just trying to bake a strawberry pie, and depending on how many strawberries you collected, that's like how good your pie tasted, but it really doesn't matter too much story-wise or gameplay-wise. It's just something, a little something extra for you to go for if you want that extra challenge. And it's the same thing for like the B-sides and the C-sides. There's also like additional post-content that you can unlock by unlocking these like crystallized hearts, and they unlock like new levels for you to go into like the heart of the mountain. And so while I say it's a short game, I do mean like the main story, but if you're just loving the mechanics and the gameplay here, like there is a ton of extra stuff for you to work towards. It won't be easy, but like Celeste has taught us all, you can do it. If you just work hard enough at it and you try and you're determined enough, you can accomplish and overcome these challenges. I do like the way that Celeste moves. I like that how she controls. It's pretty easy to get used to after a while. Like, the core movement of Madeline is she can do a little dash and she can cling to walls, and like through that you're kind of like navigating throughout these levels, and it gets more complex with like the terrain that you're interacting with. But I just think that they do a good job of like, here's this simple move set that you have, but then here's these unique worlds that you can use this simple move set with to interact with in unique and creative ways. Like, it is a very tightly designed platformer in both a figurative and literal way. I love the game. I mean, there's a reason that I've come back to it 3 times by now. There's a reason that it's won all these awards. If you're listening to this video, you've probably at least tried out Celeste one point in your life, but if you have never finished Celeste, this is your nudge to like, hey, maybe go revisit Celeste and at least play through the main story, because I think you might get something out of the gameplay and the story if you do finish this game. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Absolutely deserved score. And that's it for me. So let me know if you have any questions or comments about Celeste, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!